All right, so we've got this mountain of research about the money market, you know, uh, ways to make savings work harder without too much risk.
Yeah, definitely a smart move, especially these days.
For anyone listening who maybe hasn't heard of this money market thing, what we're really talking about is short-term debt, like, investments that mature within a year.
Right. It's all about liquidity and stability. You're not going to see huge gains, but you're also way less likely to lose everything.
Like it's not as exciting as, betting on the next big tech stock or something.
Exactly. Think of it more like a place to park your cash while you figure out what to do with it. You want your car easy to get to, but you also want it somewhere safe, right? The money market's that safe parking garage for your funds.
I love that analogy. So what's the benefit for like the average person?
Well, think about those unexpected expenses like a leaky roof or, a medical bill, or maybe you just decide to book a trip on a whim. Having some cash in the money market means you can cover those costs without having to touch your long-term investments, or even worse, racking up credit card debt.
So it's like a safety net, but one that actually earns you some interest while it sits there.
Exactly. And speaking of interest, that's another big plus. Money market investments usually offer a higher interest rate than just a regular savings account. Might not make you rich overnight or anything, but it's definitely better than letting your money just sit there doing nothing.
Okay, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just chucking money in a high-yield savings account.
Yeah.
What are some of the specific ways people can get involved in this money market?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are actually a bunch of different options out there. One that's pretty popular is money market funds. These are kind of like baskets of different money market instruments, all managed by professionals.
Wow.
So you're basically pooling your money with other investors, which gives you instant diversification.
Diversification, right?
Yeah.
Something we always hear about with investing. But why is it so important when we're talking about the money market specifically?
Well, diversification in any market helps to spread out your risk. But in the money market, where it's all about keeping your money safe, it's even more important. By investing in a fund that holds a variety of different instruments, you're less exposed if a single issuer, defaults or has problems.
Okay, so it's like that old saying about not putting all your eggs in one basket, except here the basket is a money market fund.
Exactly. Now, another option you've probably heard of is Treasury bills, or T-bills for short. These are issued by the U.S. government and are considered incredibly safe. They're like the gold standard of the money market because they're backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
So basically as safe as it gets, but probably not the most exciting in terms of returns.
You got it. T-bills usually offer lower returns compared to other money market options, but that safety and stability is a big draw for a lot of investors, especially when the economy is a little uncertain.
Makes sense. So we've got money market funds for diversification and T-bills for safety. What else is on the menu?
Well, if you're looking for something that might have a little higher return, but you're okay with your money being locked up for a bit, certificates of deposit or CDs might be a good fit. They're offered by banks and usually have fixed terms, meaning you agree to keep your money invested for a certain amount of time. Could be a few months, could be several years.
So CDs are kind of like those loyalty programs where you get a better deal if you sign up for a longer period.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And just like those programs, if you back out early and withdraw your money before the term is up, you usually have to pay a penalty.
So higher potential reward comes with less flexibility.
Classic trade-off.
It is. Now, let's say you're feeling a little more bold with your investing. Commercial paper might be something to consider. It's basically short-term loans that are issued by companies. They usually offer higher returns than T-bills, but there's a little more risk because they're not backed by the government.
Okay, now we're getting a little riskier. Are we talking about investing in the next big tech startup here? Not quite. Commercial paper is usually issued by companies that are well-established and have good credit ratings. So it's not about investing in some risky startup. It's more like lending money to a solid company that needs some short-term cash to manage their operations.
So it's definitely important to do your homework and make sure you trust the company issuing that commercial paper.
Oh, absolutely.
Ow.
And for the sake of completeness, I should probably mention repurchase agreements, or repos as they're called. These are much more common among big institutional investors and involve selling securities with the promise to buy them back later.
Okay, so kind of like a pawn shop, but for financial instruments.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess you could say that. But it's not really something that the average person would usually get involved with.
All right, so we've got a pretty good overview of the different options in the money market. I'm already feeling like a kid in a candy store wanting to invest in everything,
Hmm.
but I know I need to be smart about this. How do I figure out which of these instruments are actually right for me?
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting. It all comes down to what your financial goals are and how much risk you're comfortable with. So let's say you're saving up for a down payment on a house in the next year or two. You'd probably want to focus on keeping your money safe and easy to access, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to risk losing any of that hard-earned savings right before I need it.
Right. So in that case, you might lean towards those T-bills or a money market fund that has a pretty conservative approach. Those options give you stability, and you can get your money out easily when you need it. But let's say you're saving for retirement, which is way further down the road, then you might be okay with a little more risk if it means the potential for higher returns.
So in that case, maybe I could look into those CDs with longer terms or even dip my toes into commercial paper, but very carefully.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance between risk and reward that makes sense for you and your situation.
This is making a lot more sense now. It's not just about blindly chasing the highest interest rates. It's about figuring out how these different money market options fit into my overall financial plan.
Exactly. And that's where understanding what's going on in the market right now becomes really important.
Okay, so let's talk about the current economic situation.
Yeah.
How do things like interest rate hikes and inflation affect what's happening in the money market?
That's a great question, and it's definitely something we need to dive into. So let's shift gears a bit and look at the current market landscape because it can really influence which money market options might be the best choices right now.
Okay, so we know the players, money market funds, T-bills, CDs, even those commercial papers for anyone who's feeling brave. But what about the actual game? Like what's happening in the economy right now, and how does that impact what we do in the money market?
Now you're thinking like a real strategist. And yeah, you're right. Understanding the bigger picture is super important when you're making decisions. One of the biggest things affecting the money market right now is that the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates.
Yeah, I've been hearing about these rate hikes everywhere, but I'm still not totally clear on how they actually impact things in the money market. Can you, break it down for me?
Sure thing. So basically, when the Fed raises interest rates, it becomes more expensive for banks to borrow money. And to make up for that, they usually increase the interest rates they offer on savings accounts, CDs, and yep, you guessed it, money market stuff too.
So it's kind of like a domino effect.
Yeah.
The Fed makes a move, banks follow suit, and suddenly my money market investments could be earning more.
Exactly. That's why you've probably seen that the returns on things like money market funds and T-bills have been going up lately. It's all connected to those Fed rate hikes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be a downside too, right? What's the bad news about these rising interest rates?
Well, one thing is that it can become more expensive for people and businesses to borrow money. Think about mortgages, car loans, even credit cards. Higher interest rates equal higher monthly payments.
So while my money market investments are partying, my wallet might be feeling a little pinched.
It's all a balancing act. And that's why the Fed has to be really careful about how much and how fast they raise rates. They're trying to keep inflation under control without causing the economy to, tank.
So they're walking a tightrope trying to find that sweet spot. And speaking of inflation, how does that whole thing factor into all of this?
Inflation is a huge factor, especially when you're looking at how much you're actually earning in the money market. You got to remember that even though yields might be going up, if inflation is high, your money might not actually be going as far.
So it's not just about the number I see as my return. It's about how much my money can actually buy after you factor in inflation.
That's it. Let's say your money market fund is giving you a 4% return, but inflation is at 5%. You're actually losing 1% of your buying power every year.
Ouch. That's not a fun thought. So how do I make sure I'm staying ahead of inflation in this kind of environment?
Well, one thing you can do is look for instruments that offer returns that are at least matching or even better beating the inflation rate.
So I need to do my homework and not just settle for any decent return. I need one that's actually beating inflation.
You got it. And this is where things get kind of strategic. When interest rates are going up, shorter-term options like T-bills or money market funds that adjust quickly can be a good choice because they can react faster to those rate increases.
So it's like being quick on your feet. You can move your money around and take advantage of those higher yields as they pop up.
Exactly. But then again, locking in a longer-term CD at a good rate now Might also be smart if you think rates might go down in the future.
It's like a game of chess. You got to think ahead and position yourself for what might happen.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why it's so important to stay up to date on what's happening in the economy and what experts are predicting for interest rates. It's like checking the weather forecast before you leave the house. You want to be ready for whatever's coming.
All right, so we've got interest rates going up, inflation looming, and the Fed trying to keep everything from going off the rails. What else should we be paying attention to in this market?
Well, one thing to always keep an eye on is global stuff happening, geopolitical events, supply chain issues, all that. Those things can definitely have an impact on the money market, even if it seems kind of separate.
So even though the money market is supposed to be relatively safe, it's not like a completely separate bubble. It's still connected to the rest of the world.
That's right. Remember, the money market is part of the whole global financial system. So when things get crazy out there, it can still cause some ripples, even in the usually calm waters of the money market.
So basically stay informed and be ready to adapt. No sitting back and relaxing in this market.
You got it. And that brings us to a really important point about navigating the money market, really any kind of investing, actually, and that's understanding your risk tolerance.
Okay, risk tolerance. That's a term I hear all the time, but I'm not always sure I really get what it means.
It's all about how comfortable you are with the possibility of losing money. Some people are fine with a little bit of a roller coaster ride, while others prefer to keep things nice and steady.
So like some people love those crazy roller coasters, while others prefer a nice walk in the park. It's all about what you're personally comfortable with.
Exactly. And your risk tolerance should guide your investment decisions. If you're the kind of person who freaks out at the smallest market dip, you probably want to stick with the safest options in the money market, like T-bills. But if you're okay with a bit more risk, you might explore things with higher potential returns, like CDs or even some carefully chosen commercial paper.
So knowing yourself and how much risk you can handle is just as important as knowing how all these different money market things work.
Absolutely. It's like choosing a hiking trail. You wouldn't want to go for a super challenging climb if you weren't physically ready for it.
Right.
Same thing with investing. You got to pick investments that match your risk tolerance and your overall financial goals.
I like that analogy. So how do I figure out what my risk tolerance is? Is there a test I can take or some kind of magic formula?
There are some quizzes and tools online that can give you an idea, but honestly, the best way to figure it out is to just be real with yourself about how you'd react in different situations. Imagine your investment suddenly lost 10% of their value overnight. Would you panic and sell everything, or would you ride it out?
That's a good question to think about. I think I'd probably be somewhere in between panicking and staying totally calm.
And that's totally normal. Most people are. The important thing is to find investments that let you sleep at night, knowing you're not taking on more risk than you can handle.
So it's about finding that balance between potential rewards and peace of mind.
Exactly. And that balance might change over time as your financial situation changes and your goals change. That's why it's good to check in with yourself every now and then and maybe adjust your investments if you need to.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot here. We've covered the different money market options, the whole interest rate and inflation situation, the importance of diversification, and keeping an eye on what's happening globally. And now we're talking about the psychology of risk tolerance. It's all starting to make sense. But I'm curious, given everything we've discussed, what are some of the key takeaways or some actionable tips for someone who's ready to start investing in the money market? So we've covered a ton, like from the different types of investments to interest rates and inflation and all that. But I think the big takeaway is that it's not just about getting the highest return. It's about finding what actually works for you, your goals, and how much risk you're okay with.
Yeah, it's totally like putting together a puzzle. All the pieces have to fit right to see the whole picture.
Love that.
Oh.
Okay, so let's say I'm ready to start investing some money. Where do I even begin with all this?
Well, first you got to do some thinking. What are you actually trying to achieve with this money? Saving for a house, emergency fund, retirement. And how much risk are you comfortable with? Are you okay with things going up and down a bit, or do you need things to be super stable?
So it all goes back to that risk tolerance thing we were talking about.
Exactly. Once you've got a handle on that, then you can start looking at those different money market options.
Okay, so let's say I'm someone who's pretty cautious with my money. I want things to be safe and easy to access. What would you recommend?
In that case, T-bills or a money market fund that's on the conservative side could be good options. They're pretty low risk. And you can get your money easily if you need it.
Well, but what if I'm okay with a little more risk? Maybe I'm willing to lock my money away for a while if it means I could earn more.
Then you might want to check out those CDs with longer terms. Just make sure you understand that you're committing to that time frame, and there might be penalties if you need to take the money out early.
And what about commercial paper? Is that even something that makes sense for regular people to invest in?
It can be, but it definitely takes more research. You need to really understand the company that's issuing it and be okay with the fact that it's a bit riskier.
So not something to jump into without doing your homework.
Exactly. And no matter what you choose, always compare interest rates and fees at different places. Even a small difference in return can add up over time, especially now with rates going up.
So it's like grocery shopping. Got to find the best deal, right?
Yep. And don't be shy about negotiating with your bank or brokerage to see if you can get an even better rate.
So I've picked my investments. I've found the best rates. Anything else I should keep in mind?
Well, it's important to remember that the money market's always changing. Interest rates can go up or down, inflation can be a pain, and global events can always shake things up.
So it's not like I can just set it and forget it. I need to stay informed and maybe adjust my strategy along the way.
Definitely. That's why it's important to keep up with what's happening in the economy and what experts are saying about interest rates. There are tons of resources out there, online financial news websites, even podcasts like this one that can help.
Well, there you go. A shameless plug for the deep dive.
Yeah.
But seriously, staying informed is super important.
It is. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, don't be afraid to talk to a financial advisor. They can give you advice that's specific to your situation and your goals.
So to sum it all up, our money market game plan is figure out our goals, understand our risk tolerance, pick the right investments, shop around for the best rates, and stay informed. Sounds like a solid plan.
It is. And remember, the money market can be a really helpful tool to manage your money and reach your financial goals. It's not about getting rich quickly. It's about making your money work smarter.
I like that. Okay, well, I think that wraps up our deep dive on the money market. We've covered a lot today, from the basics to some of the more complicated stuff. Hopefully you're feeling more confident about making smart decisions with your money.
Definitely. And remember, the learning never stops. The more you explore, the more comfortable you'll become with all things finance.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. Given everything that's going on right now, with interest rates still climbing and inflation being a concern, what do you think will be the most attractive money market option in the next few months? And why?
That's a great question, and there's no easy answer. It really depends on how things play out with the economy and what the Fed decides to do. But thinking about these kinds of questions will help you stay ahead of the game and make the best choices for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So keep those brains working, and until next time, happy investing.